Today I'm visiting Christopher, Devin, and their beautiful baby boy Forrest at their studio in Bellingham, Washington. These two have been running an online business called the Conscious Creativity Academy, which helps artists master their craft and create meaningful, impactful art. In the first 6 weeks of launching their program, they made just under $40,000 and now run their business in a way that allows them to earn an income while raising their son and having the creative freedom they've always dreamed of. But things weren't always easy. Just 1 year ago, they were stuck feeling disconnected from the life they wanted and felt caught in the cycle of trading all their time for money.
I quickly hit a cap where I was like, I actually can't take more students one-on-one because I don't have the capacity for it.
And then, on top of that, the unthinkable happened.
I was on a hike with my dad and my brother-in-law. I slipped and I fell, according to the search and rescue team, 30 feet straight down. And I landed on a very small cliff that saved my life because the cliff continued for 60 more feet. It took me a really long time to come back.
4 to 6 months where I wasn't sure that she was ever going to be the same again. There was like the really uncomfortable and scary question of like, am I going to be taking care of her for the rest of our lives?
It was during this life-changing moment and while planning to have a child that it became clear that they wanted to make a big change. So after joining our Authority Accelerator program and building out their online course, Christopher and Devin have been able to turn their passion for art into a thriving business and a whole new life for their family.
We actually replaced Devin's salary and her like annual income, with less than a year.
But to understand how they ended up quitting their jobs and earning a full-time income online, I needed to hear about how they got to this point.
So we met in college.
We met dancing at a party and just fell in love. I had already had plans to leave the country very shortly after we met and do some study abroad. And Christopher was willing to come join the party. So he came and came along with me as I was traveling to South Africa. So we lived there for half a year together. The point being, we got to know each other traveling the world. And then we came back and settled here in the States and started a creative life together.
I would say less I was willing to go along. It was more that if I don't follow her, then I'm gonna miss the best thing that could happen to me in my life. Shortly after our travels, we ended up moving up to the San Francisco Bay Area. I was already in this space of juggling between a career as a builder and always having a studio since I was a kid and teaching myself oil painting and really kind of in a space of being divided between those two things. And we were just trying to carve out a life for ourselves. We had gotten this amazing contract with this company down in Oakland, and I was on my way to actually close the deal, give a presentation on the project, present the plans, and start building. And I never made it there. I stopped, called my friend and told him that I couldn't do it. And at that moment I made a 180-degree shift and decided to pursue my art and never go back. And that was though a multiple month deep in dark places, questioning everything and thinking that I was crazy and thinking that I was going to make a huge mistake and fail miserably. But I knew that I had to kind of go through that and get absolutely clear about what this was going to look like and how I was going to go about doing it and make sure that I was serious about it.
Although this was already a massive step into the unknown for Christopher, it was also a big change for Devin.
We decided to go all in on Christopher as an artist. We moved into a yurt, basically a tent in the woods.
We wanted to live rural, which meant I was very far away from where I actually needed to go to school.
Yeah.
And unwilling to do a 90-mile commute every day. I got a little teardrop trailer that I lived in behind the school campus 4 days a week for 3 years, and I would come home on the weekends to be with Devin. There's this idea of sacrifice, you sacrifice the comfort of today for the potential freedom for tomorrow, right? And I think that's something that has been a core principle for us. And still it continues to be that, and how we're growing the business today.
Okay, so how did you get into painting and what has sustained your love for it all these years?
Yeah. So, my mom taught me art from a very young age. She got me and my siblings into it. She was an artist herself. And I always just gravitated towards painting as a medium in general. I think I love the tradition of like the instruments and like the smell and the feel and just like that kind of romantic notion of, you know, what I always felt when I would walk into an art studio. And also just visiting museums and places around the world, like I always was drawn towards these like large scale narrative paintings that were very fantastical and, you know, kind of gave me that feeling of awe, right? That like art was meant to provide an experience. It wasn't just like a pretty picture to hang on your wall and something to be collected. And so it follows along this line of like art as a vehicle for meaning making that like really taps into as a tool for my own expression, my own like process of self-discovery. And along the lines, it's like my style had emerged, which I describe as like mythological realism, and that's influenced by Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, and also like how we've used myth as a psychotechnology. It's a way that we envision the future potential of what we're aiming at, and this idea that like it's more real than real, like it's larger than life, and so it keeps us captivated, it keeps us inspired, it keeps us like excited about what we're moving towards. And that's what I really think the function and role of art is in society, is to give people stories that keep them enlightened and like excited about what they're moving towards in their lives, right?
Okay, so you're teaching full-time, you are completely focused on art, and where do we go from here? Like, what happens next?
I'm just finishing up my program down in Seattle, and you know, a few things started to happen. One, I started to find out that I really liked teaching. Actually, my mentor invited me to start teaching at the academy that I went to, and I started like growing out that side of what I love and discovering that was like something I cared deeply about.
Was there a specific point where you knew that you wanted to take that to a different level, like when you started this program? Where did the seed start to be planted?
Yeah.
Oh, one major moment was, you know, I had been teaching for a long time, and then we just hit this point where you and I were just ready to start a family, and started that process. It wasn't going very well, and we went on vacation to Hawaii with my family, and we were all like in a Airbnb together, and that morning we had our very first Zoom consultation with a fertility doctor, and so we were just getting the ball rolling. And then an hour later, I was on a hike with my dad and my brother-in-law, and I had a major unexpected accident. I slipped and fell off a cliff. It sounds wild and silly, but it's what happened. I was hiking along, very experienced in the woods. I slipped and I fell, according to the search and rescue team, 30 feet straight down. And I landed on a very small cliff that saved my life, because the cliff continued for 60 more feet beyond. I don't remember any of this. There was a wild helicopter rescue, and then an ensuing, I don't know, half a year, right?
Year of recovery. Yeah,
it took me a really long time to come back.
4 to 6 months where I wasn't sure that she was ever going to be the same again.
I couldn't speak. My thoughts were very unclear and non-linear, and my vision was destroyed. Yeah, I mean, it was full. It was like as full on as it gets. I didn't know if I would ever be the same. It was the first time that I got this like stop for a second, there's something else.
It was a forced pause.
Yeah, exactly. It was the first time I was able to step back and consider what else was a possibility.
I mean, we had already been talking, and I had already been kind of, you know, poking about like, hey, what would it look like if we had a life that we had more freedom and we worked together and we were able to travel and, you know, be with family more. And so I think this forced pause like gave us some space to just like to start talking about that.
So where did the idea of starting an online program come from?
I had already gotten to the point where I was doing like a lot of one-on-one coaching, and I loved it. It was like, and it was working well, but it was quickly absorbing all of my time. And so, you know, what started out as like, oh man, this is something that I'm really excited about and I really love to do, to like, I quickly hit a cap where I was like, I actually can't take more students one-on-one because I don't have the capacity for it. And so I just started like perusing YouTube and the internet, just like trying to find like, what would a course look like? And, you know, specifically I was like looking at art courses and it was like looking at what they charge. I was like, that makes zero sense. Like, I'm not going to charge less than $100 for a course. And anyway, it was just kind of weeks of me like looking at things, trying some like free trials and like watching a bunch of YouTube videos. And then I landed on the Authority Accelerator and like your YouTube channel and signed up for an interview. After having the first call with one of your team members, and I was like rolling over and looking at the program, and there was like an obvious thing. I was like, this could be amazing, but it's gonna like require all hands on deck sort of situation. So then it became like more of a serious talk about like, hey, what do you think about not going back to work?
Yeah, it was an aha. It was oh, wait a second. You've been talking about this idea, but all of a sudden I'm part of it.
You have now made the decision to move forward and create an online program. How did it go?
Sonny, it was crazy town. I was pregnant when we started doing this work. We had baby Forrest, and then actually now it's time to get to work building a program. I mean, we did like our timing was out of control. It was totally wild.
It was like an insane sprint. So our due date was
early December.
And within 5 weeks, we did like our whole ICA development, like made all the calls, and then we designed the pop, launched all within like 5 or 6 weeks, sold out. We decided, we were like, oh, we're gonna do 20 seats, ended up selling 26 seats. And like went in and was doing like an 8-week program, like leading up to the birth of our son. I mean, I remember, you know, some of the other artist examples that are in the program, like I was like, wow, that would be like ridiculous if we hit those numbers. And then we did. And I was like, holy shit, we can do this. Like, this is just the beginning.
They joined the Authority Accelerator program at the perfect time, just before their son Forrest was born. And it wasn't long before they started seeing real results. But before we get into that, if you want to learn exactly how to turn your passion into a thriving online business like Christopher and Devin, click the link in the description to access our free course creation masterclass. What were some of the metrics that happened from that initial launch? So revenue, seats sold, etc.
Yeah. So we had designed and sold and launched the program within like 5 or 6 weeks, which was insane. And we generated just under $40,000 in that time. And then taught, you know, the pop live over, I think it was 8 weeks.
So in juxtaposition to that, when you created, let's say, like the biggest piece that you've sold, like price point wise, how long did it take and what did you sell it for?
So relative, a little bit cheaper than that, like in the 30s, and you know, it took me half a year.
Wow.
Yeah. Before, like when I was like doing one-on-one coaching, or if I'm just like painting one original painting and selling it, like there's so much more left on the table. There's the expertise that I have over 20 plus years as an artist that then I can like broadcast out to an indefinite amount of people, like with one program, versus like doing it just one time with one person. And like that, you know, that's a lot more energy and time put in, obviously. You know, what you could look at it as like doing reproductions of a painting.
So you now have almost 80 people in the program, and you're seeing these results come up regularly, which is really exciting. What do you think is at the root of people getting such consistent results?
Yeah, totally. So one word, clarity. And it's like this thing I repeat all the time. Clarity is key at like every single one of our pillars, from vision to process to like mindset. And it's like clarity on like what you're doing and what you're aiming at, but like clarity around the whole process and the system and the structure that like helps you get the results that you want, right? And that's that is like incredibly important within our program, that, you know, there's this old paradigm that's pretty played out in the world of art, that, like, you know, we just wait for inspiration or the muse to strike and we just show up to a blank canvas and like create a masterpiece. And that is rarely the case. And I think sets a lot of artists up for failure, that if they're not having this like wonderful flow state moment, that like it wasn't meant to be. But like creativity is something that's cultivated. Yeah. It's something that like we go through a step-by-step process to get in touch with and learn about, and then follow a system that allows us to understand that like paintings like this are something that like you put design and effort into doing successfully. So by the time that you start the painting, you've figured out all of the problems, you know the process, you have confidence that you're going to be able to like turn this painting into something that you're proud of.
I think it's important to touch on the fact that even as a successful artist, could you have if you just continued to do your artwork in the way that you were, could you have sustained yourself financially if you weren't working?
Yeah, but it would have come at a cost.
Yeah, he would never have seen Forrest, ever.
Yeah, like that was the big thing, was that like I was 100% available to be like, okay, like I want you to just be full-time mom. And, you know, and honestly, that's like been a big way of how it has been in the beginning, which is what we wanted, is for her to just be able to be home most of the time with Forrest. But like, you know, for me, there was like, it was such a loaded thing coming into the possibility of being a father. Like I did not want like my son to grow up with like dad always being gone and like me never having the space or availability to like be present with him. Like that just was like not an option, you know? And so I like was looking like, yeah, I can go slave away and like get into mad hustle and like never see my family. And no, wasn't willing to do that.
It was clear from chatting with these two that creating a good life for Forrest was always front of mind, even in some of their toughest moments. As a new mom myself, I wanted to hear how that journey to parenthood had affected them and their business. And so Christopher showed me one of the most important paintings in his studio.
So there's this idea, this overarching idea that I hold, which is art as a vehicle for meaning making, and that like we can use our art to navigate meaning in our own lives or something that we feel might be useful to the culture. For this particular painting, it was really a painting of setting intention to hopefully have a family. It's called Invocation. It's part of like being at the edge of winter with the sun coming in and melting away the ice and like softening the space and opening the space for new life to come in. And you know, it was something that we have been wanting deeply and dearly for a long time, and so this was like a prayer essentially. We actually went up to Mount Baker, and like wow. She was in the snow, like wearing that. It was a sunny day, but it was still pretty cold.
Part of why this moment was so potent, and for us this image is it still resonates so deeply, is because it wasn't easy. We'd been trying to start a family. It wasn't going well.
We weren't sure that we were going to be able to do it.
Yeah, so we did multiple IUIs. They didn't work. We ended up doing IVF, which was hard on all the levels, physically, emotionally, financially.
Especially on the back end of recovery from your brain injury.
I had just had this incredible brain injury where I couldn't speak or walk. And then when we felt ready again, we were like, also I'm an older mother. So there was a time sensitivity that we felt. And so as soon as I was ready again after my injury, it was like, okay, well, what can we do? Let's go. Here we go. Yeah. So we were grateful to get all the support and to have access to the medical care that a lot of people don't have access to. We were able to make that happen. And then baby came. Yeah. And then all of our dreams were fulfilled.
For them, the journey to becoming parents was filled with unexpected challenges, but it also became a key inspiration behind the art they now create and their drive to help other artists create impactful work on the same level.
Like part of our program, we invite people to do like some pretty vulnerable, like interpersonal work and soul searching, you know, and like part of that is like getting out into nature. This practice we call wandering, to like explore what they're feeling from their deepest part of themselves, to like let their unconscious come forward and like reveal to them like what they feel drawn to do as artists. And so there's a few standouts. One was this gentleman. He's a combat war veteran, and he, you know, is in a wheelchair and is unable to walk, or was at least at the time that this happened. And you know, one of the things we ask people, like I said, to go out into nature, get off the trail and like explore, you know, these different practices that we offer. And I would, like, when I was teaching that, I thought of him immediately. I was like, oh my God, how is he going to be able to have access to this? And I was like nervous about it. And I actually got on a call with him one-on-one to like give him some options of how he could go about doing that. And then anyway, I hear back from him a week later, and he like went out into this field behind his house, just crawled off of his wheelchair and like crawled on the floor in the rain and laid down on his back, and was like, had this big insight and revelation into like what he was doing as an artist and what he wanted to do, and like found all of this empowerment and this vision of like how he wanted to move forward. And so that was definitely like a standout experience. And those stories are just unending.
If you were to go back in time to the version of yourselves where you're teaching still, and you are starting your art career, and you were to sort of envision where things are today, does it feel real? Does it feel kind of crazy that you're here? How does that feel to that past version of yourself?
Yeah, it feels more real now. I would say, like, you know, I mean, we've only been in this program now for a year. 6 months ago, like, it felt very unreal, you know, but now it's like this whole other level of like this feeling of potential, right? It's like, okay, like we have a system and we know that it works, and we know what we need to do in order to grow the business, and that like it's just a matter of like managing those basic levers to like make shit happen. And so I think now it's like excitement in the sense of like, oh my God, we are just at the beginning of this, you know? And yeah, it's like went from like fear, uncertainty, to like overwhelm and awe, to like, hell yeah, let's fucking go. So.
Now their mornings are looking very different. With the time and space to raise their family and also work on their business, they've designed a life that blends their creativity and family life seamlessly. I feel like it's just such a huge like realization and moment of your life being so integrated today. Can you tell me a little bit about, you know, what life looks like now with your family?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like we had mentioned before, this idea of life by design, and like what we're unwilling to compromise, and like not wanting to be a distant, like non-present father or mother. Like we set the studio up so that like right now upstairs, like Forrest is taking a nap and he can be here like while I'm working downstairs, and like, and we're working, and just to make it to where we have exactly what we want.
What do you think Forrest will get from watching you two live your life in this way?
I want him to see us caring about artists, about other people, and helping to like elevate their voices, and that only empowers us, right? That's sort of a mutual exchange. I want him to see that.
Yeah, I mean, to bring it full circle, freedom of choice. Like, I want him to see that he has that like he can carve out his own path the way that he sees fit, and that like, you know, being authentic and following that path like has great benefit.
Christopher and Devin's story is proof that with creativity, commitment, and the right plan, it's possible to design a life you love. If you want to learn more about how you can do this too, make sure to click the link in the description now to access our free course creation masterclass. And also make sure to check out this video to learn my step-by-step breakdown of how I would make $100K in just 6 months online. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.